So here's one example where the last character, the commas, has no directionality, the 05B8. And if you look at the string up there, the last character is actually that one, because this is written from right to left. So, and there are many other kind of scripts which have these kind of issues. And even though we are now pretty close to, as you will see, the end of this update of internationalized domain names, we still have some problem with some characters in, for example, the Sinhala script in Sri Lanka. There is the vowel R, which actually is not included in Unicode at all, which makes people on Sri Lanka pretty irritated. So we don't really know what to do with that. So the new IDN standard will consist of a few documents, not only one document. We're not making it too easy for people. But what we have seen is that we think that the new standard, that is still not perfect, we still know there are issues, but we will be able to describe what the issues are, and it will still be much, much better than earlier. Okay, so we have seen that we don't have to change the prefix. It will be backward compatible, and the risk that people actually have domain names registered with characters that will be forbidden is extremely small. And that is just because registries have followed the recommendations from ICANN to actually only allow certain code points that are tied to languages. Because one group of code points that we are removing completely are all the mathematicals and graphics and all those things. Because they are definitely a source for phishing issues that we heard a lot about earlier today. So backward compatibility is still important. Here are the 4 drafts that we're working with and the current versions. Of course, we are just in the weeks before the IETF meeting. So, for example, the tables documents in mine, which talk about what code points to allow or not, it might be the case that I will release a version 06 as well. Depends on how bad weather it's up in Sweden, whether I can come home to this evening or not. Anyways, so as you see on the version numbers, if nothing else, we've been working on this for a while. The first one, draft cleansing IDNA-based issues. This is actually, in fact, named Rationale and Issues. And this is the main document that talks about why we are doing this. It ties to the IB document. It explains why there are certain issues that we have not addressed, what kind of policies registries should actually adopt to make life better for the registrants, etc. Then we have the IDNA-based protocol document, also by John Clenson. It replaces the IDNA specification. This is no longer a string prep profile. It talks about what the algorithm really is for an application which is going to do lookups and resolve domain names. And it talks about what a registry should do before actually registering domain names, 2 different algorithms. This is the core specification of the new standard for internationalized domain names. There is a completely new document which didn't exist before, which talks about bidirectional script. Harald Alvestrand has written that one, which goes through and defines an algorithm for how to decide whether a label is legal or not when you have not only left to right characters. And then the document that I'm working on that instead of having a table with code points like the old IDN standard, it's actually an algorithm which you can use and apply to the Unicode tables and calculate whether a code point is allowed in internationalized domain names or not. And the reason why we are doing it that way is just because we want the same standard and the same algorithm that I'm specifying in this document to be used, to be able to be used also, for example, in Unicode 5.2 and 6.0, etc. It should still work. And at the moment, I'm working on the tables with Unicode 5.0, but next week I will actually see, okay, what happens if we go to Unicode 5.1? How much changes are there? This document, for each code point, define for each code point a derived property, which is either protocol valid, context O or context J, it's a context dependent, disallowed or unassigned. And it's specified in the protocol document whether the code point can be used or not for these things. Most important, of course, is that either the code point is valid or it's disallowed. Most of them are like that. But, of course, everyone knows that all the mappings that we had in IDNA 2003 then, in the new version of the standard, we have decided not to include any mappings whatsoever. And that means, for example, that uppercase characters are not valid according to the algorithm tables document. And this is just because we found one of the findings is that different applications need to use different algorithms when mapping to what characters are allowed or not. For example, a classical example is if it is the case that I send one of you an email message and as part of the body of the message I happen to send you URL, and inside that URL there is a domain name. Now, depending on what kind of script and directionality the text of the body of the message has, you might write the URL itself right to left or left to right. And it also might depend on the context, whether you, for example, when you have a script that is right to left, whether you actually write out HTTP colon or not. Those of you who have tried to use a browser that is built for the Arabic script, you try that once. It's kind of interesting. So what we have decided is that what we are going to define in this standard is only what is allowed to use in the DNS, nothing else, which is sort of the output of the mapping algorithm of the old IDN standard. There are people talking about interest of creating a document that recommend how the mappings are to be done in the new Unicode standard, so that we might see that as well. And that browser vendors and stuff are very interested in that. So once again, why is this needed? Well, we definitely need something that is independent of the Unicode version, because today libraries and operating system and stuff are already working based on Unicode 5.0, but the old tables are much, much smaller code point set. We cannot today handle bidirectional scripts, and then there are other issues in 4690 that we just need to do something about. So then, of course, the question is when this RFC is ready. And this slide I actually stole from a presentation I had 7 months ago, and then I said it would be ready within 6 months, and it's now 7 months later, and it will take another 6 months or something. But to be serious, we are requesting, and this is my request to you, that to actually have a look at these documents and try to look at them seriously and try to implement based on them. We also have a last round of very careful review, and we have some issues with some scripts in Asia, but we hope that we can do something about that. We hope that this will go to official IETF review during 2008, and we will have a BOF at the IETF in Philadelphia, which is the week of March 10 to 14. And there is, and have been for 3 years, a mailing list, idna-update@alvestrand.no, that maybe some of you already own that one, otherwise I request you to subscribe to it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.